This took place a little over 2 years ago, and I wanted to share it as a reminder of the important lesson I learned that night. In 2016, I had just started working at a motel. It wasn't great pay, but I needed a steady office job. A friend of mine, Michael, had helped me land the gig. I worked the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, which was fairly uneventful, mostly checking in guests and doing paperwork. For a few days, the owner trained me, and then Michael took over for the night shift training. The owner was set to go on vacation with his wife, so my training was rushed, and before I knew it, I was working the night shift alone. The motel's office had large windows and a glass door. A security monitor displayed the camera feeds from around the property, but there wasn't a separate night window like many motels have. It was just me, inside the office, handling things alone. Around 1 a.m., a man walked in, asking if there were any rooms available. He seemed normal enough at first, so I told him there were vacancies and began the check-in process. As I was entering his details into the system, I noticed him swatting at the air and making spitting noises, like he was trying to get rid of invisible flies. I tried to ignore it and just get him checked in quickly. I handed him his room key and he left, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling he gave me. Minutes later, he came back, slamming his hand on the glass door. I jumped out of my skin. He cracked the door open and angrily asked, "Why won't you let me into my room?" I tried to stay calm and offered to make him a new key, even though I had no idea why the first one wasn't working. The look in his eyes was terrifying. Something wasn't right. I gave him the new key and he left again, but I was on edge. I texted Michael, hoping for some advice, but he was asleep and I got no response. I kept watching the security monitor, but soon enough, I saw the man returning to the office. I panicked and ran to the back office, locking the door behind me. I pulled out a pocket knife I carried for protection and waited. The man started yelling from the lobby. "Hello? Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" I should have called the police right then, but instead, I stupidly tried to handle it on my own. I called out, "I'll be right there, just on the phone." I kept trying to reach Michael, but still no answer. When I finally stepped out of the back office, the man was gone. I heard him in the bathroom muttering to himself, and my heart sank as I heard him say, "Kill her, kill her." I was petrified, but instead of calling the cops, I foolishly tried to appease him. I said, "I'm sorry about your key. Let me walk you to your room." He agreed, but insisted on walking behind me. I gripped my pocket knife tightly, hiding it in my sleeve as we made our way up the stairs. I was drenched in sweat, terrified he'd make a move at any moment. He stopped at the wrong room, someone else's room. I pointed out his actual room, trying to stay calm, and he finally went inside. I ran back to the office, locking myself inside. Later, I found out that the room he'd tried to get into was occupied by a lone woman. I felt sick knowing how close he'd come to potentially harming her. That same night, I checked in a police officer from a nearby town. I confided in him about the creepy man, and he offered to keep an eye out. The following night, the man returned, but I had already locked the doors and told him the motel was fully booked. Thankfully, he left without incident. When my boss returned from vacation, I told him everything that had happened, but he didn't take it seriously. Despite this terrifying encounter, I continued working the night shift for another year, dealing with other strange incidents. But that man, and the danger I felt that night, was by far the worst experience. I'll never forget the lesson I learned that night. Trust your instincts and call for help when you feel unsafe. I'm lucky things didn't end worse. I used to work at a hotel in my town, and I can honestly say I regret every moment of it. Our town had recently been hit by a hurricane, which had caused significant damage to many homes, forcing people to vacate. The hotel, about a 20-minute walk from my house, became busier than usual for a while as displaced residents checked in, but eventually, things quieted down. In fact, it became quieter than before the hurricane. The hotel was a standard bed and breakfast type place with the typical offerings of scrambled eggs, frozen sausages, and assorted cereals. My shifts were always at night, from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., after which someone else would take over until 10 or 11 a.m. The hotel wasn't large, and during my shifts, we'd often only have a handful of guests, sometimes as few as 9 rooms booked. There were nights where I wouldn't see anyone at all. The hotel had a back break room for employees with a coffee machine, fridge, table, and a couple of sofas. There was also an employee bathroom back there. Most nights I spent my time in that room unless the front desk bell rang, which meant a guest needed something. One evening, while I was in the back, I heard a deep voice coming from the lobby saying, "Hello," repeatedly. I got up, walked through the door to the front desk, and saw a man standing on the other side of the glass barrier. The glass had a small opening at the bottom where we could pass items to guests. The man told me he needed towels, so I grabbed a few and slid them under the glass. He snatched them aggressively, shot me a strange look, and then walked off toward the hallway of rooms. I sat in the lobby afterward, watching the man on the security monitors as he wandered down the hallway. He seemed odd, looking around nervously and, at one point, rubbing the towels all over his face. I muttered to myself, "What in the world?" as I watched him get into the elevator. Afterward, I returned to the break room. About 10 minutes later, I heard the same voice in the lobby again. It was that man. He was back, standing at the counter saying, "My keycard is broken," in a loud voice. I asked for his room number, and he gave me something like 2C, which immediately raised a red flag. Our rooms only had numbers, no letters. I knew he was lying. I told him, "Sir, our rooms don't have letters. Are you sure you're staying here?" His response was terrifying. He threw the towels on the floor, smiled in a disturbing way, and leaned closer to the glass. With his face nearly pressed against the glass, he whispered, "I'm going to kill you." Then he repeated it, louder each time until it was nearly a scream. Panicked, I grabbed the phone and dialed 911, showing him as I made the call. He stood there, mocking me as I described the situation to the dispatcher. Finally, he laughed and slowly walked out the front door. I told the dispatcher that he had left, and she asked if I still wanted an officer to come by. I declined, thinking the danger had passed. The next few hours of my shift crawled by. I stayed in the lobby this time, too shaken to return to the break room. One guest checked in during this time, but the rest of the night was uneventful. At 2 a.m., my relief arrived, and I clocked out, eager to get home. As I walked through the cold parking lot, I regretted not bringing my coat. I pulled my hood up and stuffed my hands in my pockets. Then, I heard a voice. I couldn't make out what was said, but it came from behind the bushes near the hotel windows. My heart raced. I quickened my pace, but soon after, I heard footsteps behind me. Quick, soft footsteps, like someone running on their tiptoes. When I turned around, I saw no one, but I knew someone was hiding behind a nearby car. That's when I heard it, a chilling voice saying, "I'm going to kill you, bitch," followed by faint laughter. I didn't need to see him to know it was the same man from earlier. I quickly scanned the area, trying to figure out my next move. Running wasn't an option. I couldn't outrun him in my work shoes. Then I noticed a house with an upstairs light on. Someone was awake. I decided to run there and ring the doorbell. As I started toward the house, I saw him peeking out from behind the car, grinning that same terrifying smile. I sprinted toward the house, screaming for help, and rang the doorbell frantically. That's when the man grabbed me from behind, choking me, and whispered in my ear, "Die, bitch." I genuinely thought I was going to die. Just then, the front door of the house swung open, and the homeowner shouted, "Hey!" at the man. The attacker released me and fled into the night. I never looked back. The man helped me inside, gave me water, and called the police. I explained everything, and the police reviewed the CCTV footage from the hotel. They later had me come in to identify the man in a lineup, but none of the suspects looked familiar. I don't know if I was too stressed or scared to recognize him, but I didn't pick anyone from the lineup. To this day, I wonder if I made a mistake. What if I let him get away? I'll never know for sure, but the memory of that night still haunts me. I work in the pro department of a home improvement store, and I typically close with another cashier, who I'll call Nicole. Nicole is incredibly kind but also quite shy. She's also very attractive, which means a lot of contractors tend to flirt with her. Usually, it's nothing too concerning, just a few compliments or the occasional dinner invite, which she politely declines. I might have considered asking her out too, except for one important detail. Nicole has a girlfriend, and the constant attention from men makes her feel uncomfortable. When we first became friends, I suggested she tell these guys that she's gay to deter them, but Nicole always insisted that her personal life wasn't their business. Over time, Nicole and I became close friends, and working together kept the long shifts from feeling so lonely. We even took turns covering each other's breaks. One afternoon, after I came back from my lunch break, Nicole told me about a creepy guy who had been hitting on her. She said she politely turned him down, explaining that she was already in a relationship, and though he didn't seem pleased, he eventually left. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just another guy being too forward, and we laughed about it. However, later that same day, the man returned. Nicole wasn't at the register, as she had gone to help a customer in the lumber section, so it was just me. He looked like a regular guy, maybe even considered attractive to most women, but something about his demeanor was off. I asked if I could help him with anything. "I'm here to see Nicole," he said. When I asked how he knew her, he claimed that he had asked her out earlier and that she had said yes, so he had come back to pick her up. I knew this wasn't true, so I told him she had already left for the day. Your classic lie to protect a friend. His friendly expression vanished, and he looked annoyed. He insisted that he needed to talk to Nicole again, contradicting his earlier story about her agreeing to go out with him. When I told him that he couldn't see her, he crossed his arms and demanded to know why not. I panicked a little, and, not wanting to reveal Nicole's personal life, I blurted out, "Because she's my fiancée." His face twisted in confusion, and he scoffed, asking how someone like Nicole could be engaged to someone like me. I'm no movie star, but I didn't think I was that bad looking either. Still, I told him it didn't matter, and that we were getting married soon, so he needed to move on. He shot me a death glare but said nothing more and left. Later, when Nicole returned, I told her about the encounter. She was creeped out but found the fiancé excuse hilarious, joking that she'd rather be engaged to me than go out with the guy. I took it as a compliment. Weeks went by, and the incident faded from our minds. Then one night, after dark, Nicole and I were closing down the registers and gathering the trash when we heard a loud bang on the front door. The sound startled both of us, and when we looked over, we saw that it was the same man, pressing his face against the glass. "We're closed," I told him, but he insisted that he needed to come inside. Nicole yelled that she wasn't interested and demanded that he leave her alone. His response? He shouted that he wasn't there for her. He was there for me. He said that if he could take out her husband, she'd be his. The man wanted to kill me. I told Nicole to run to the manager's office and call the police while I stayed behind to watch him. I was terrified, though. He wasn't a huge guy, but who knew if he had a weapon on him? Our store didn't allow us to carry any kind of self-defense items, so I was completely vulnerable. The man began slamming his body into the sliding doors, trying to force his way in. The rattling of the doors made it seem like they'd break any second. Just then, Nicole reappeared, running toward me with a 2x4 in her hands, shouting that the police were on their way. Finally, the man decided to flee. The closing manager arrived just as the police pulled up, and they reviewed the security footage together. Thankfully, the man was identified and arrested later that night. After that terrifying incident, neither Nicole nor I felt safe working at the store anymore. We both ended up quitting, but we remain close friends and even go to the same college now, although we found different jobs to support ourselves. I'm incredibly grateful that Nicole was there that night. I hate to think about what that man might have done if she hadn't been so quick to grab that 2x4, or if I had been alone. She says she's thankful I was there for her too, as having a male friend around made her feel a bit safer in situations like that. The whole ordeal opened my eyes to how dangerous it can be for women when some men just refuse to take no for an answer. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our stories and would like to hear more, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us continue bringing you captivating tales and new content every week. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We appreciate every one of you for being a part of our storytelling journey.